But I want to take a second and just highlight the male experience, particularly boys that are turning into men. In this show, we have so far experienced Dean, Jess, and I just met Logan. And here's the one thing that I've realized, that this show really likes to highlight boys from different areas of life and how they become men and their experiences. And I find that really, really interesting. So we get Dean, who comes from this very straight laced family that wants things to be exactly perfect all the time, right? It has to be perfect, right? And then you have Jess, who came from a family that wanted to get rid of him. His mom pretty much was like, "Hey, you go live with your uncle. I don't care," and he just left. She pretty much kicked him out of his life, out of her life. I don't know much about Logan yet, but from what I understand, from what people tell me, he's very pretentious. He's very uppity. You know, he has it good. He has money, right? But he's an a hole. So we get a little bit of everything. Well, not everything, but we get a little three different aspects here, and they all three of them have their flaws, and that is what leads to people being like, "I'm Team Dean. I'm Team Jess. I'm Team Logan." Take Rory out of the equation. Them as people, I find it very interesting that we get to see these boys that are turning into men from various areas of life, you know, and now I start to kind of see that how that can affect a boy turning into a man, their background. So people complain all the time. They're like, Dean is, you know, when things aren't perfect, he gets mad, he gets angry. Well, let's take a look at why, because that's how he was brought up. Think about his mom in this episode. Everything has to be perfect. Oh no, I have to put the alarm on. If I don't put it on, it's going to wake us up and we're not going to get our sleep. I want to keep the door open because I need to make sure everything's okay. Make sure Rory leaves at a perfect time, right? Very particular about a lot of different things. And it starts to make sense. Oh, this is why Dean is this way. I bet you his parents are the same way. His dad is down in the basement because he's just stewing. That's why Dean is the way he is, because that's how he was brought up. Jess has been neglected his entire life. His father is just out there in California, just completely, pretty much ignoring him in a way, because the spinoff didn't work. And then you have his mom who pretty much shunned him. And you have Luke who has been a good father figure for him, but they've had their troubles, right? And knowing all that, you start to understand, you know, that Jess is a survivor. He had to grow up fast because he didn't have these adult figures in his life leading with a good example. So like all of the bad behavior that you see Jess do, it makes sense. And then Logan, like I said, I just met him, so I don't know much. But from what I do know, he's very pretentious. He has money. I'm sure I'll learn more about him, and I'll be able to expand more about these thoughts one day. But I'm pretty sure I'll find out why he's a dick, right? When we first see him in episode 4, or I'm sorry, episode 3 of season 5, he's like really he's an a hole, and I'm pretty sure his upbringing is what caused that. So I just find it really interesting that the show kind of explores those three different things, because once you get the background about these characters, you start to understand why they behave the way they are. This was the first time that like it became clear to me why Dean is the way that he is. This it became clear to me why I don't think he's toxic. I think it's his upbringing. I don't think Jess is toxic. I think it's his upbringing. I don't think so far, while I'm not a big fan of Logan, I don't think he's toxic. I think he's just a product of his upbringing. And I think that we need to be really, really careful when we think about young boys turning into men and labeling them toxic, when really we need to be thinking about their upbringing here. Why are they that way? Why are boys that are turning into men behaving this way? Because of their upbringing. So this episode really, really not blew my mind, but it really put things into perspective for me. Now that I got a behind the scenes peek at what life is like for Dean, I was like, boom, oh, this makes perfect sense. Now I know why Dean is the way he is. When things aren't perfect, yes, he gets frustrated because he wants things to be exactly perfect. He doesn't want things out of line. Why? Because that's how he was brought up. If you consider Dean to be toxic, that's fine. But that also means that his mom and dad are toxic. If you consider Jess to be toxic, that's fine. You can think that. But that also means that everybody that surrounded him and raised him in a way is also toxic. I think that We can't just look at them as individuals. I'm talking about boys turning into men. These aren't like 45-year-old men with experience that we're talking about. How old is Dean and Jess and Logan at this point? 18, 19, 20? They are young boys turning into men. That's why I hesitate to use the word toxic because they are still learning. Do you remember yourself at that age? The mistakes that you made? Do you remember them? Do you remember those mistakes that you made? I remember the mistakes that I made. I wouldn't consider myself toxic. I considered myself immature, dumb, not toxic, dumb, very immature because I was a product of my upbringing. So is Dean. So is Jess. So is Logan. So is Rory. So is Lorelai. So is Luke.